Hello, I'm Sammie Purcell, Associate Editor with Rough Draft Atlanta, and I'm here as always on Crash Zoom with indie filmmaker Aaron Strand. How you doing, Aaron?
I am doing great. How are you?
Doing great. Really excited about this episode today. But before we get to that, I'd like to ask you if this is your first time listening. First of all, welcome. Thank you so much. But if you like what you hear today, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also follow us on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like, which is at Crash Zoom Podcast. Is that right, Aaron? I don't have it in front of me right now, and I usually do.
It's Crash Zoom Pod on YouTube.
Crash Zoom Pod on YouTube. Thank you so much. Perfect. And if you've never listened to Crash Zoom before, what Aaron and I do here is we take a look at what's going on in the Hollywood industry, and we try to boil down why that matters to independent filmmakers. But we're actually not doing that today. This is our first episode in a new kind of interview series that we're doing with independent filmmakers and creators. Aaron, take it away.
Yes, our guest today is Madison Hatfield. Madison Hatfield is an Atlanta-based actor, writer, director. I absolutely love her. As an actor, she's appeared on TV shows including Atlanta on FX, Chicago Med, The Other Black Girl on Hulu. She has written and directed shorts and a feature film, but most recently her short I Could Dom premiered at Aspen Shorts Fest. It is executive produced by Billy Magnuson's production company, Happy Bad Bungalow. But we're not here to talk about any of that.
No way.
Sammie, I'm handing it off to you.
Oh, sorry. Today, we are here to talk about an essay that Madison recently wrote for the Georgia Writers Substack titled The Billionaire Trope, in which she reflects on her recent money-making directorial job directing short-form vertical content for the Chinese-backed platform Real Short, or as Madison refers to them, soap opera movies for phones. Aaron, can you please explain to me what Real Short is?
Of course, I would be happy to. For those who don't know, this is a TikTok-like app that was developed in China where it has amassed hundreds of millions of views. It was brought to America by the Chinese tech mogul Joey Jia, and it's targeting a viewership of busy, middle-aged American women looking for romance and fantasy in their everyday lives. At least that's what their pitch claims. So since its founding in 2022, Real Short has amassed millions of viewers in the US and has even spent time as the #1 entertainment app on the App Store, beating out TikTok. And despite the admittedly cheesy storylines and bare-bone production, it is proving to be the only business that's really succeeding with dramatic content on the social media format. And I find this so fascinating, and why I'm so excited to talk to Madison, who is directing several of these series. First of all, Madison, how are you doing? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, wow, what an intro of all the things I'm proud of, and then we're not talking about anything. I'm coming to you fresh off a shoot for actually a different platform. I went to LA. I was asked to go to LA and direct one of these out there, and so I am exhausted, but also primed to discuss what the hell we're doing. I don't know if I can curse on the show, but
Go ahead.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm excited to talk to you guys. And yeah, I was really excited that piece like spoke to you and was of interest to you, because I haven't written essays since I was like in college. And so, when they asked me to be a part of that Substack, I was like, what the heck do you want from me? But I've actually gotten a lot of feedback about the Billionaire Trope, and it's been very cool to have these conversations. So very, very happy to be here. Big fan of what you guys are doing, and both of you. So thank you for having me.
Well, can I just start off and kind of segue, and Sammie, I apologize, I'm already getting off of our question order. But
okay.
But I just want to start off. So can you explain, so we've given a little intro about Real Short, but talk about your essay, The Billionaire Trope. What is the Billionaire Trope, and what was the impetus to write this piece?
Yeah, I think that I was really inspired when I started to see, because I've been doing this since 2024, right? I think the first one I did was early-ish 2024. So this work that I'm doing is not new, but with the election and specifically the campaign, and also sort of the micro person to person aggressions that I was seeing in comment sections online. I saw this one interaction that really shook me, where this younger, sort of ultra conservative young man was like going after I think it's like his uncle-in-law. I mean, I'm like, who talks to their uncle-in-law like this? But anyway, and this was not someone I knew very well. I just like happened to come across this screenshot that he posted, but it was just a slew of really racist, homophobic sort of rhetoric and insults against this guy that I kind of know. And then, yeah, he ended the whole thing by saying, I'm going to be a billionaire one day and you'll be left spinning on your thumb. And I was like, oh my God, like this young man truly believes that if he votes a certain way and thinks a certain way, that he is going to be a billionaire. And while being there are more billionaires than there have ever been. We're still talking about less than 1,000 in America, right? Like we are talking about a very small number of people. But I think that class has launched a basically marketing campaign that has really woven its way into our political fabric that makes people believe that that could be them. And what I'm doing with apps like Real Short is in some way, I think, feeding into that monster and that very wrong way of thinking. But I also, and I mentioned this in the essay, I do think that it has the decency. What we are doing has the decency to feel like a fantasy, right? Meeting a billionaire that you don't even know is a billionaire who ends up saving you from an abusive relationship. And then you get married and you're like, oh my God, he's a billionaire. And now I don't have to worry about money anymore. Like that's a fantasy. And I think the people who are watching it know that. But I certainly don't think that I'm helping this narrative that's permeating sort of all aspects of our society. And I feel conflicted about that. But I think the thesis for me is that I don't know how accountable I can hold myself and how accountable any artists who are working in any sort of commercial film can hold themselves, because the same economic structure that is necessitating this kind of content that people can consume on the bus from job to job, that's the same economic violence that's forcing me to say yes to something that I feel morally gray about, So it's like we are all kind of under the same capitalistic nightmare. And I just, it was just an essay sort of about like, I'm seeing this shit start to show up in ways I didn't expect. And it makes me reflect on what I'm doing and how I'm complicit in that. And I think that the only thing I can think to do is I do have to say yes to certain jobs to survive the moment, but I can also continue working on other kinds of art that will allow me to survive in the future and make the world closer to what I think it should be, what I'd like it to be. And I think we just, as artists who have our like work as our job, like we have to do both. And we have to find some peace in doing both. But some days that piece is easier to come by than others. So that's essentially the essay that I was trying to write. And you could probably read it faster than I just explained it to you. It's not that long.
Yeah, and just for reference, a few of the series that Madison has directed have the wonderful titles such as Taming the Lion, Billionaire on Bikes, and The Billionaire's Masquerade. So it's not subtle, the sort of billionaire fetishization that's happening here.
It's right there in the name. Yeah.
Do you get any input on the titling of these series, Madison?
No. The amount of input that I get, I mean, it is very, very limited. And that's like kind of part of it, right? It feels closer to like commercial directing than it does to narrative directing, just because like I'm working for a client and they have a vision and they have a way of doing things, and I'm here to sort of help them do that. I like doing them, especially when I'm doing them here in Atlanta, because I do have an opportunity to work with people that I know. And, I think the people who are working on these are actually really talented. I love being able to cast my friends in these, when they audition. And so I feel like my job is, of course, to make the client happy. But, for me, I think what I'm actually getting out of it more than anything else is an opportunity to build a really positive set environment and make the process really like meaningfully positive. you know, the product is the product, right? It's going to be what it's going to be. But I like thinking that I can hone my skills as a director who, yeah, is able to get shit done, be efficient, work quickly, but also not in a way that makes anybody feel exploited or stressed or like their input isn't valued. So that's what I'm getting from it, more so than what I'm producing.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like, are there ever moments where you're sort of like fighting against your own creativity, I guess? Like you have kind of an idea for what could happen, but there are kind of bigger structures in place, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, kind of all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
it is the pace at which we're working. It's usually somewhere like 10 pages a day is like a light day. We're talking about like 15-ish is closer to what we're doing. So you are moving at a pace that is sort of unfathomable to someone who's maybe not, especially anyone who's not worked on like even indie stuff. Like
Hmm.
it's really really fast. So yeah, my it's definitely an exercise in like how to um how to work as efficiently as possible and make sort of the best of a really hard situation. So there are times when I'm like, okay, we can afford to like put the camera on a Ronin and like put some movement in a shot. But most of the time, I mean, it is truly just getting coverage. And I think the most artistic I get to feel is actually like before we start shooting, I'll have meetings with the actors where I allow them to like feel like an actor for a little bit and like talk about the character and answer their questions. And that way. But I mean, honestly, like it's a fucking trick because what I'm trying to do is avoid questions on set later that are going to slow us down, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
literally like,
Efficiency all the time.
right, right. And
Yeah.
so no, I don't feel like an artist when I do
Hmm.
these. And I don't think that's why I'm doing it. I'm
Hmm.
doing it so that I can make some money so that I can do the things that make me feel more like the filmmaker that I am. And yet I don't see it as like this waste of time, right? I do think I have improved as a director from doing these. So I don't want to give the impression that it is somehow hurting or hindering
Hmm.
my ability to be the artist that I want to be. I do think it's helping. It's just the product itself is not at all conducive to me having creativity as a director.
Well, speaking a little bit about your sort of artistic touch when it comes to these things, so they're,
Mhm.
you know, they have a tone that
Yeah,
like is that has a certain kind of cheesiness to it. But I say that like affectionately. And now,
yeah.
is that tone something that you're actually actively encouraging on the set, or does it sort of just happen as a byproduct of the pace of production?
I mean, the scripts themselves are lending themselves like it is the reason I call them soap opera movies for phones is that soap opera is the closest
Yeah.
tonally to what I can think that these are. Um, you know, it's interesting because especially the villains on the page are very funny. Like if
Hmm.
as a comedy writer, as a comedy actor, as a comedy director, I read those scripts and I'm like, this is hilarious. And I've like been told like they don't want it to be funny, but I'm like, unfortunately, like that's what you wrote. And
Yeah.
so I do feel like I get like the last one I did, excuse me, the last one I did in Atlanta, which has not come out, I don't think. But for the sort of main villain character, I did cast one of my favorite like improv comedians in town because I was like, I think you could do a really good job with this. And I think that he really towed the perfect line where if someone's watching it who's maybe attuned to comedy, they can see that it's funny. But someone who's just watching it as a soap opera, like he's playing a villain. Like he's a
Hmm.
really bad guy. He's not doing anything like too over the top. But like when you write into the script that someone gets slapped and their glasses fall off, like that is textbook slapstick comedy.
Right.
How
Yeah.
how are you and you're telling me you don't want it to be funny? It's funny. And so I feel like there are ways that we're especially with the villain characters, I can sort of work some comedy in there with, you know, for those with eyes to see it. But I do understand that people are coming to this platform for a very particular kind of tone. And so who am I as one director to be like, no, I'm going to give them something different that they may not like, you know?
Yeah.
I think that I had to really do some reflecting on like, um, you know, I'm not better than this. You know, like I I've talked a lot about, something like a multicam comedy, right? With a laugh track. When I watch those, I usually don't find myself enjoying it as much, but I also have to recognize that that's because I'm privileged to live a life full of comedy and a life full of laughter, and I don't need my hand held through that kind of storytelling, right? I'm so lucky that I feel comfortable to like sit even alone in my home and laugh at something. And I don't need that help to know when
Mm.
that should happen and that feeling of, oh, I'm not alone in this. And so it's the same with these, right? Like I'm very fortunate that I live a storytelling lifestyle and subtext is interesting to me. And, like I had to do some soul searching around like looking at this content and recognizing the value that it serves for people. And I, for a long time, I've been in defense of things like multicam comedies, which I know a lot of people sort of in my line of work are sort of like, oh, I hate those shows, right? Or I've never liked them. And I think that there is an inherent privilege in having that point of view because I think that they are really helpful for people who maybe grew up in a house that wasn't full of laughter, who maybe have jobs that are very isolating, where they don't laugh at all during the day. And if they go home and they sit and watch a show, it can be really comforting to, have this really formulaic and really obvious sort of comedy structure that allows them to always feel cared for, right? It's holding their hand. And there are certain like dramas that do this too, right? The first time I watched This Is Us, I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't do this. It's too much for me," right? You're
Hmm.
you're you're emotionally manipulating me in ways that I don't personally need to be manipulated. But there are a lot of people again who grew up or living lives where emotions are not as encouraged and they are not able to express themselves freely. And so that kind of dialogue, those kinds of storylines, those kinds of music cues are really important for them to feel cared for and feel walked through the narrative that they've chosen to watch. And I think that for these vertical soaps, it's a similar thing, right? These are for people who live a life usually different from mine, right? Where they don't have the time that I do to sit and absorb art and film. They are potentially mothers who have, a lot of responsibilities and are maybe catching moments of these in the bathroom or right before bed, or they've got multiple jobs. And, like as I mentioned in the essay, they're like watching these on the bus from job to job. That was what was told to me in my interview. They were like,
Hmm.
this is who this is for. And that made me have to like really pause and be like, oh, okay, well, I'm not better than that. I want everybody, regardless of their lifestyle and their upbringing, to be able to have work that they can watch and feel connected to and compelled by. And so that's what I'm here to do. And this is not the same work that compels me, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, I can think of a better way that you should do this, or a better, you should be watching better quote
Sure.
unquote stuff than this. And so I'm going to change it in the ones that I do. I'm like, no. I do try to hold some lines around like violence. Like I don't, if the script calls for like a man to slap a woman, I like, you have to change that or I won't do it. I've luckily not received a script to direct that was super um like abuse heavy, like from a narrative standpoint, but there are certainly lots of them on this platform that
Hmm.
feature like significant acts of abuse. And it does seem to me, based on what I've seen so far, at the end of the day, the abuser is punished and the woman being abused is,
Hmm.
elevated to a better life. But still, like, still got to shoot those scenes, right? You still got to ask actors to go through that. So I certainly have some content um stipulations for myself and things that I would not feel comfortable doing and would express that. But from a tone perspective, I'm like, yeah, this is what people are obviously really loving. So let's give them what they like, baby.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, this kind of billionaire fantasy, it's been around for a long time. Like, this isn't
Mhm.
the first, iteration of this. Pretty Woman is like the perfect
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
But I do think it is sort of interesting how these stories have sort of, I think, really taken off since the pandemic. And I think like
Mm,
loneliness has a lot to do with it. And like,
mhm,
I mean, these are sort of designed to watch on your own, right? Like to watch on your
mhm,
phone, to watch by
mhm,
yourself. And I
mhm.
wondered if you have any thoughts on like how this particular fantasy has evolved, like particularly in
Yeah.
the age of social media, and how real short does or does not like do anything kind of differently from how this fantasy has been presented in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because billionaires used to be the bad guys, right? Rich people used to usually be the bad guys. And they were this sort of representation of greed and individualism. And like, and that's not to say that was always the case, but like, yeah, you
Sure.
think about you just think about certain like classic films and like they're the enemy.
Mr.
Um,
Potter from It's a Wonderful
exactly.
Life,
Mr.
like classic.
Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Burns from The Simpsons.
Yes, yes. And so it is interesting that we've definitely transitioned into an age where like billionaires are people that we look up to. Uh, and that's wild to me because I think that while ingenuity, innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, like when done ethically, these are things that are worth, celebrating, I think. I think the fact that billionaires are heroes is kind of fucked because I don't think that anyone actually needs $1 billion. Like I think that the the specificity of a billionaire as the hero it feels to me like a product of late stage capitalism where we're just like at this era where like even $1 million feels like not a lot of money, even 100, like
Yeah.
my life would be fundamentally changed forever if I had $1 million. Do you know?
That's a good point. Like it's not just a super wealthy guy. It's
No,
a
it is a
Yeah,
billionaire.
yeah. It can't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's so strange. And I was reflecting on this because, okay, but as you logged into this interview today, Madison, I was just telling Sammie how once again I went low key viral on TikTok, and it was a miserable experience because
the worst.
if you yeah, it's always horrible. We we went through a stressful situation on this show. I just went through a stressful situation where I posted an intro to the Kurosawa film Stray Dog, and a clip of that went viral on TikTok. And because I was talking about the horrors of the Second World War, and the people that were commenting on it were just warmongering psychos. But for me, as an artist who is putting things out into the world that is trying to be thought provoking, that's trying to be a little bit interesting, and you're just met with this constant barrage of overwhelming criticism, especially when the algorithm is sending your stuff to people that hate you. It's no wonder that people just revert to prosperity gospel content. It's no wonder that you just find yourself sucked into this hole of like how to get $1 billion and how to get 1 million followers, because that is one thing that if you send it out into the, not only does the algorithm love it because it perpetuates the platform's own modus operandi, but it's
Mhm.
the sort of stuff that most people just comment on like, yes, yes, like more, I want to be a billionaire too.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
you don't have to deal with this barrage of negative comments and haters and
Mhm.
assholes.
Right. It feels like I mean, it's kind of a perfect propaganda campaign because it feels very benign, right? It feels very safe. Like, yeah, rich guy, girl who's not rich, now she gets to be rich too, and she gets to have peace. She gets to have ease and love and goodness in her life. And you're like, "Oh yeah, that's totally yeah, that's just a story. That's just a nice story." But it's like, "No, you're also saying something about where peace and ease comes from in our very real society." And I know I'm a victim of that kind of thinking. I know I find myself fantasizing not about $1 billion, but again, like 1 million, even like
Yeah.
10,000. Like
Literally.
I'm constantly like, yeah, if I just had a little bit more money, I think I would feel a lot better. And that is both true and also a nightmare thing to say. Like
Hmm.
we it didn't have to be like this, and yet it is. And now we have these hero narratives around billionaires saving the lives of abused women that are perpetuating this notion that you can get your peaceful satisfying life from this kind of, even if you don't really believe you're going to run into a secret billionaire pretending to be a homeless man on the street, like even if you know that that's really unlikely, there is still, I'm sure, in the back of everybody's head, the notion that, well, I could have a partner who's really rich, or I could, find my way into a lot of money. And that is literally kind of the goal, not just the fantasy, but the goal that a lot of people are working to. And it's very troubling, I think, when you step back and look at it.
So I wonder, you've talked a little bit about how you think this kind of model, I guess, has evolved, or the fantasy has evolved over time. But I wonder, how do you see this model sort of growing in the future? Do you think like this kind of short form phone drama content is kind of a long-term thing, a flash in the pan? How do you see it kind of evolving?
I certainly don't see it slowing down right now, just based on, what I know about how much production is happening both here in Atlanta, in LA, in New York. I know they're starting, stuff in Canada. And they're also like, one of the actors I worked with on the last one I did, she did one in China. So they are the production is robust right now. And I think that the bigger players, or the more traditional players in our entertainment landscape, are going to try to get in on this. I've heard tell of people being asked by studio execs sort of, more casually about, this kind of work and what their experience was like. And, I think when something is this successful in the entertainment industry, like, everybody's going to start paying attention and seeing how they can get their own piece of it. I think, you mentioned the pandemic. I do think that this sort of hyper isolated mode of consuming stories is potentially a direct result of that, or at least an indirect result of that, right? We did go through a period of time where, our TVs and our phones were kind of our only way of accessing storytelling, and it was not safe to be in communal spaces for consuming or experiencing stories. So I, even though we're like, hopefully, God, in a different phase of that pandemic, and we're sort of back to experiencing stories together in some ways, I do think that there are people who I think really liked that, who really liked getting everything they needed right at home. So I don't think that I don't think it's slowing down. I don't think it will slow down anytime soon. Um, I think what they'll start to run into is, if they're going to be this successful, are are they going to have to start paying people more, right? Like, with every new model, you start with like, oh, well, this is new, we don't know what's going to happen. And now it's like, Real Short was one of the top 100 time businesses of 2024, right? It's like, if you're doing that, now people know your name and what you do. And, you know, is there going to be external pressure to sort of make it feel more like a standard industry set experience, right? Both from a process standpoint and also a payment standpoint. I don't know. If the bigger players do get into it, right? Are they going to be paying more like union rates? And is that going to pull sort of the best talent from these current platforms over to there? And now, yeah, you have a situation where the content at the platform starts to suffer and not be up to the sort of bar that they've set for themselves. I
Or
can't
can they
say.
even can they sustain that type of payment structure? Because, like, for those
Right.
who don't know, basically, like, the way these shows work is that the first 7 episodes are free, and
Mhm,
so
mhm.
they're assuming that once you are hooked, then you
Yeah,
start paying for the premium content. And I'm wondering, I'm wondering what their revenue streams are, like how
yeah,
many converts they're getting from the free to the premium,
yeah,
and what sort of cash flow that creates. Where would they even be in a position
yeah,
to pay that sort of
yeah.
higher rate?
And I know for Real Short in particular, there's like they have two options, right? Like, you can directly buy tokens to continue watching. So you're literally just paying to keep going, or you can watch ads, right? You can have an ad break. And so I know in that platform in particular, they're definitely getting like two different revenue streams depending on what people choose to do. I have heard, and this is wild to me, but I've heard that if you just go the token route, you end up paying like $30 to $40 for one of these series, right? So, and
Woo!
it's like
Wow.
a movie, right? And, like, that's more than if you were to like go to a movie theater. Now, I don't
Yeah.
know
And
how many people are.
it's like 42 minutes of content.
It's well, I mean, the scripts that I'm directing have been between like 85 and 110 pages. So
Oh, wow.
Oh, really?
it's long. I mean, maybe
Oh,
they're
okay.
editing a
Okay.
lot of stuff out of it, but it's a feature length. You know, it feels like shooting a feature when I'm
Mhm.
doing.
Okay.
So
But
it is
still,
long. Even still, $30 to $40, that is more than you would pay to see a movie at a theater. It's even more than you'd pay for those like premium, like, you know, Amazon's got it straight from the theaters early, you know,
yeah,
that's
Wicked
really
is
like
looking like
30.
a bargain right now.
Right, right. And so it's, you know, that's wild to me. But I don't know that, you know, I know they know the data. And I know that like data and analytics is a huge part of their business, because I will receive notes and it's sort of like, well, we need this shot to look this way because it's going to be a part of the promo, and you know, where we see data that this sort of shot is like what works well, you know. So they're definitely
Oh,
very
wow.
granular, especially around those first few episodes that you do before the paywall, because yeah, that is the time that you're going to like attract
Ho-
people and hopefully get them hooked so that they keep either watching ads or paying. So it's data is a huge part of this. And again, like I don't want to speak for the people doing that work. Like I don't know exactly how it works
Mhm.
and exactly what they're looking for. I can only speak to how it has been communicated to me as a note for the director to make sure that I do, you know, X, Y, and Z in those first, you know, 10 or whatever episodes. But it's fascinating. And like I really I I do continue to work for these companies. Like I don't want this to feel like I am shitting on what they do. I think that they've obviously found something that's working for a lot of people. I see online that there are people who are really passionate about these stories. I've seen actors who are making a really good living doing mostly this sort of
Mm.
work. And there are, you know, there is something to be said for the consistency of this work, right? Even if it's not paying at the same level that something else is, especially like during the strikes and stuff, this is kind of the only game going. And I know there are crew members in Atlanta who, you know, they talk about when they started that their, you know, their buddies were like making fun of them and like, what the hell are you doing? And this is so stupid. And now they're like, hey man, do you know if they're hiring? You know,
Yeah.
like
yeah.
we're we're in a place where like there's just not as much being filmed period in the traditional way, and so this is, even if it's not the best paid gig in town, it's a, if you get in, like you can have consistent work in your field, and right now that is kind of all we're able to hope for. Right, like that's kind of all.
Well, outside of meeting a billionaire who's disguised as a homeless
Right.
person.
Exactly. I know, like
Still holding out.
my
Yeah.
billionaire fantasy, I don't need to marry them. I need to stumble across a billionaire who's interested in getting into independent film financing. Like
Yeah.
that is
That's your
that is
billionaire
my
fantasy.
billionaire fantasy. Yes.
No,
And so
no billionaire would be so foolish. Come on now.
no, I know they wouldn't. That's why it's a fantasy, Aaron. It's my fantasy. Let me have it. But yeah, like we're definitely all like, yeah, we're plugging away at this work. And yeah, I guess I just want to say like I recognize that these companies have found a kind of storytelling that is speaking to people not just in America. Like you know, you were mentioning like there is a population they're targeting here in America, but I think Real Short, they subtitle in like 40 different languages. Like
Yeah.
there are a lot of international viewers of this, and apparently very passionate international viewers of these series. So it is creating a new sort of like ecosystem within our larger industry that is very fascinating and is certainly worth examining and criticizing. But I really don't want this to come across as like a full hit piece of them, because you know it's they are employing people,
Yeah.
and they are employing
Yeah.
people consistently.
Oh, absolutely. And we the purpose of even doing this, either highlighting the essay and even talking to you, certainly is
Mm,
not to hit them at
right.
all. So
No.
actually, on that
Yeah.
same track, I'm
Yeah.
so fascinated by them sharing or not sharing the data, but at least hinting
Mm,
at the data around
yeah.
sort of shots and techniques that really
Hmm.
engage
Hmm.
viewers. Is there
Hmm.
anything from this experience that you have learned or that you have thought about bringing to your own writing or your own storytelling, and any way that like some of these models could could be adapted to bringing content that maybe you are more passionate about to a social media type platform. I mean, it blows my mind that this is the only drama that is succeeding in this
Mm,
format.
mm, mm. I mean, I think that it's interesting for me to be working in such pure drama because I have, historically always had comedy as part of my work. And so it's been interesting to learn, like, yeah, what are they looking for in terms of making something as dramatically compelling as possible. um I do think that I'm learning how to build, like, because some of these there is a romance element to it, but it's not necessarily the main storyline. Like, some of these that I do, like, it's very much like a revenge story with a romance subplot,
Mm.
but we like want that romance to feel, satisfying at the end. And so learning how to use, like, sort of classic, like, soap opera visual and audio strategies to, like, make that romance feel very tangible very quickly. I think that's been an interesting challenge for me. It's like, you're not giving me a lot of room on the page to make two people fall in love. So how do we communicate that? That's definitely been interesting. I think there's some cultural stuff that I'm learning. So one of the few times I've had to reshoot a scene, um, I had the male lead open his own car door, and I had to reshoot the scene because it did say in the script that his, like, bodyguard opens it for him. But in
Mm.
my mind, I was like, well, that's a dude. Like, he should open his own door. Like, that's, it's weird if some other guy comes and opens his door for him. And it was a huge problem, and they
Cool.
made me reshoot
What?
it.
Interesting.
And so, but I think that that has to do, like, I mean, obviously it is like a status sort of thing, I
Mm.
guess, having someone open your door, but it just surprised me. Like, if it had been a woman, it would have made more sense. But I mean, maybe that's my Southern upbringing, right? It's like
Mhm.
women have their doors open and men open their own doors. Like, that's my cultural bias. And then I was sort of up against, like, oh, there's like other stuff going on. And that was when, like, data was mentioned to me. It was like, no, this is the kind of shot that, like, we want in the, this is going to be used in our basically trailer for it. And so it needs to be right. And it needs to be, what we said in the script. So I was like, that's my bad. I really made the wrong call in that moment.
Oh,
But
because it's like, oh, he's got to show
He's
forth. So this
rich,
yeah,
yeah.
he's rich. Yeah,
Rich people
yeah.
don't
signifies.
touch doors.
They don't touch their doors. And
Yeah.
so, but again, in my mind, I'm like, but we're presenting him as this very, like, traditionally masculine, sort of powerful guy. Why wouldn't we have him open his own door? I mean, it's wild stuff like this that I'm, like, having real conversations about, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Where the fuck am I? What is this world that I've stumbled into? But yeah, I mean, I do have to sort of, like, learn these. There's a specific, like, visual language. There's a specific set of rules that I'm, like, slowly learning as I do these. And it's interesting. I don't know how much I'll carry into my own work in the future,
Mhm.
but I am at least learning. I'm trying to really learn how to play the game that I'm in right now.
Yeah. You've mentioned kind of they have different, like, "Ooh, we want this kind of shot," or these types of
Mm.
techniques. What specifically are those? Like, what kind of shots, I guess, are they looking for
I
all the
mean,
time?
usually what we can afford to do with the time that we have is just, like, any time, like, one of our hero characters comes into a room, right? We want them to look as hot and cool and
Sure.
awesome as possible. So getting cool slow-mo shots of, feet up to head, and, you got the Ronin, so you get to have this cool, you can whip around them or whatever it might be. They love, like, insert shots, which I think is really interesting because you are watching on the phone.
Mhm.
Like, it can be hard to see the details of what's going on. And so, like, for example, if somebody, like, grab someone's hand, right? If I don't get an insert shot of those two hands clasping, like, I have not done my job for the day. Like, that is really important. Anytime, like, an object is touched, I get an insert of it because they love this. They love the insert. So that's part of it. And then, yeah, any romantic moment, they want that slow-mo. They want that, like, they're not super interested in, like, close-ups of the face, because that can, it just takes up the whole screen. But
Mm.
that's, like, the one time that you can, like, get a little bit closer, really try to emphasize that eye contact. And then they really, um the platforms that I've worked for, they were both the same in this respect. Like they are really interested in like as frontal as the coverage can be, that is ideal. Like they do not like profile shots, and even like 3/4 shots are like too profile for them. Like they really want they want it well lit, and they want it full on. Like you want to see all of their face, which can introduce challenges as a traditional filmmaker. Like that's never how you shoot. It's almost never what you want to do. So having to relearn, like, oh shit, sorry, yeah, we got to move the camera because they're not going to like that. And like I have to have extra headroom because they want people to be able to be watching these, and if they get a notification on their phone, it doesn't like cut off someone's face.
Oh, that's
So like
interesting.
it's like it's super technical, it's super specific, and the first one I didn't know any of the rules at all, and I learned like every time I do it, I learn a little bit more about what it is that they want, what it is that they're looking for, and how to give that to them in the time that we have. Because I also have to be realistic about the fact that we are doing 12 to 15 pages usually in a day, and I'm having to think like an editor and be like, okay, what shots are they actually going to use? If I get this wide, do I just do it for, 2 or 3 lines because that's all they're going to use, and then we move on to something else? And it's it's a constant like puzzle as a director, and working closely with my DPs who have been amazing on all of my projects, like working together to figure out like what can we do, how fast can we do it, and it's going to give them the best chance possible to like make this kind of feel good and cool.
Simple technical question. Are you guys angling the camera vertically? Are you tilting
Yes.
it, or are you just cropping in post?
No, we tilt it. The camera gets turned. Yeah. These are
That's
great,
so
funny.
incredible cameras turned the other way.
And I would assume that all the insert shots is simply like they're just looking for visual hooks, like little things to break up the action
Yeah.
within, because it's kind of just a wash of dialogue.
Yes, correct. Yeah, no, it's a lot of coverage, it's a lot of dialogue. So yeah, the inserts, like, yeah, they allow something to cut to, and it allows the viewer to like see the details of what's going on in the scene. So yeah, it's all very fascinating, just a way to make it more visually interesting. And that's the thing. It's like there has to be a trade-off, right? Like I can't take time to do a bunch of really cool shots. We don't have that time at all. So you have to be really strategic about what you're getting and how you're getting it. And if something's not working, like just saying, okay, fuck it, and moving on, because you don't have time to like get something right. Especially if it's something that you're trying to do for a visual reason as opposed to a narrative reason. But I've gotten really good at getting dialogue coverage really fast. I know how to shoot a scene basically as fast as possible. And then that does leave a little bit more time to find moments where we can create some visual interest, give the editor something they can cut to. But yeah, there's just a bunch of dialogue.
Yeah. How many takes per setup do you think you're getting? Like 2 tops?
2. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
maybe 3 if
Amazing.
something's like gone wrong, but like 2 is the standard for me. Yeah.
Wow. So getting back to the essay and your sort of thoughts and reflections upon this, you had a quote in the essay that I really, really liked. You say this, quote, "Maybe in the beginning, the money served the stories. Maybe the money even respected the stories. But as capitalism rages insatiably on, the money respects only itself. And now the stories themselves are about money and how it alone can drive us, how it alone can save us."
Mhm.
I love this quote. It really brought me back to growing up, being a fan of hip hop in the '90s, and for me, I'm sure everyone has this moment because I mean, hip hop has always sort of like talked about money, but I will never forget when in the early 2000s, or I guess mid 2000s, when someone played for me Young Jeezy's "Hypnotize" off of Thug Motivation 102, which has a chorus that I actually can't repeat, but it was about getting money. And it was the first time I ever heard a song where like the chorus was simply about getting money. It wasn't even like wreathed in some more poetic representation. It wasn't wreathed in anything else. It was purely about getting money. And it just sort of, I don't know. It just, I never forgot it. It stuck with me my whole life. And we've seen this shift towards the money is the means in and of itself across culture. I mean, how do you where do you see this going? Where do you how do these stories evolve? I mean, are we ever going to get tired of the fetishization of money?
I certainly hope so, because what a boring thing to fetishize. I mean, it is a fake concept, right? It is made up, and yet we are expected to hold it up as this like untouchable, unchangeable, unmutable thing. Like I heard recently someone, they compared capitalism to like the Catholicism pre, before the Protestant Revolution. Like we are meant to take capitalism as this thing that has always existed and will always exist, and it cannot be questioned. And if you question it, like you are a deviant, right? Like you are bad. Like we are just in this era where we cannot imagine, or if we can, we are encouraged not to imagine a world where money is not the main source of our safety and our main source of ease. And I think it is dystopian when you think about these songs, these films, you know, this political propaganda. You realize that it's just feeding us all a lie that if we keep working and producing and making money, the money will eventually come to us, and then we will be okay. And it does hurt my soul that art has become one of the drivers of this narrative. Um, because I don't actually think that's what art is for. I don't think stories were ever meant to glorify money. And yet that's kind of where we are. I do think that, as like I said, as capitalism just sort of rages on and we become more and more abused by it, the vast majority of us, I have to hope that there will be a shift, both from an artistic perspective and just a societal perspective, and we find ways of taking care of ourselves and reminding us what makes us human and what gives us peace outside of currency. And that we can be telling stories that don't revolve around that, and living
Mm.
lives that don't revolve around that. But honestly, where we are right now, and I think especially this particular political climate, I think we're going to be stuck in the money loop a little bit longer. But I think the best thing that we can do is recognize it for what it is, see it for the lie that it is, see it for the strategy that it is by powerful rich people to make us think that they're going to save us and they're going to take care of us, when in actuality they are only in the business of taking care of themselves and getting richer. I think even if we're stuck in the loop, in the sense of we have to take these jobs and we're consuming these stories, as long as we can like keep our feet on the ground and like touch the grass of, this is a fantasy, money will not save me, only people will save me, like that's the best that we can do right now. And just hopefully, if enough of us do that, we'll start to slowly see it shift back towards something more human. That's all I
Yeah.
can hope for.
Yeah. I mean, the pendulum always hopefully swings, right?
Eventually, I mean,
I mean, eventually.
Yeah,
might
will I
take a
live to see
while.
it? I don't know.
I can't remember. I think it was one of these leftist philosophers, either Zizek or Adorno or something like that. But in talking about sort of the proliferation of disaster movies, post-apocalyptic movies, that it is easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yes,
which
genuinely.
is just
And no,
crazy.
that is, it truly, truly is.
Well, Madison, I want to thank you so much
Oh.
for joining us today. Where can people follow you? Where can people find some of your amazing work that you do outside of the short form soap opera genre?
Oh, that's so nice of you to ask. Yes, my horizontal work. So so I honestly use my Instagram as a business website at this point. So you can always follow me at Mad Hat, MADHAT 31 on Instagram. I do have a website, www.madisonhatfield.com. I try to keep it updated. We'll see. I Could Dom is still on the festival circuit, but we're starting to explore what an online premiere would look like. So hopefully it will be online sometime for people to see. movie, but you can rent my feature, Courtney Gets Possessed, on I think Amazon and maybe Vudu, that I co-wrote and co-directed with John O. Mitchell. My short, Post Citrus, my first ever sort of solo directed short, is just on YouTube. You can watch that if you want. Very silly little thing. And yeah, I think Instagram's a great place to try to keep up with me, and that's also where I'll obviously be updating people on the I Could Dom online journey. But yeah, I love filmmaking. I love doing it, and I want to encourage, like, if there are directors who are interested in the vertical world, I do encourage you to try it. It is a different like way of looking at your craft, and it does challenge you in ways that you will never be challenged in other sort of corners of this industry. And always happy to answer any questions that people might have about my experiences. And yeah, thank you guys so much for wanting to talk to me about this. It's fascinating to me, and it's cool to hear that it's interesting to other people too.
Oh, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. We appreciate it.
Yay.
Yeah, and we'll have links to everything, all of Madison's work. We'll have it down in the show notes, so please go check it out. It's really, really fabulous. This has been wonderful, and be sure, hold on, sorry, let me take this again. This has been wonderful. Like Sammie said, if you like this episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, rate, and review. Hit us with those 5 stars. Leave us a little note. It would really, really help us out. This has been fabulous, and until next time, Madison, Sammie, I will talk to y'all later.
Talk to y'all later.
See ya. Bye, guys. Thank you.